Grand Theft Auto, a true giant in the gaming industry solidified with the massive success of Grand Theft Auto 5, and a series that has a lot of nostalgic memories for many, with games like San Andreas, Vice City, and GTA 4. Yet, a series that just never gripped me. I've enjoyed each entry I've picked up and played, but never felt the urge to play for too long or beat any of the games. And I'm not really sure why that is, because games with a similar formula, like Red Dead Redemption, is one of my favourite games of all time. However, another one such game that I don't know if I'd consider one of my favourites, but still a great game all around, is Canis, Canem, Edit, or more commonly known as Bully. For me, I think a lot of my fond memories for Bully stem from playing it when I was in primary school. I could relate more to the story, as like many others, I was being bullied at the time, and always wanted to stand up for myself, but didn't. So here in Bully, I got to vent a lot of frustrations, and take on a persona in Jimmy Hopkins that didn't take anyone's crap. But much like my memory of my primary school years, Bully is a game I remembered very little about, and I thought it was about time I headed back to school, Bulworth Academy to be precise. In today's video, I'm going to be going over Bully's story and gameplay, to see how it holds up almost 14 years later. Here is my retrospective on Bully. Before I get into Bully, it's here where I'd usually go over the game's development. Unfortunately, I could not find out much for Bully, which is strange because I found development timelines and others talking about the subject, just with no sources or developer comments I could find. Just wanted to get that out of the way because I love talking about a game's development, but there just isn't much to talk about here, unless I wanted to go into the outdated controversies surrounding the game before launch. And spoiler, I don't, because this is all those controversies summed up.
Oh, won't somebody please think of the children?
The story of Bully begins as we are introduced to our protagonist for this game, Jimmy Hopkins, who is being sent to Bulworth Academy, a private boarding school, as his mum has just remarried and she and her new husband are going on a year-long honeymoon. Once we arrive at Bulworth, we learn that Jimmy has been expelled from several different schools, and that his bad behaviour won't fly here at Bulworth, and he is to be on his best behaviour. After this introduction, we quickly befriend Gary Smith, a fellow student, as he introduces us to the various groups within the school, from the bullies, nerds, preppies, greasers, and jocks. And Jimmy and Gary work together to try and assert their dominance over the school. It doesn't take long for Gary to betray Jimmy, and from this point the game's story essentially just revolves around trying to create peace at Bulworth Academy amongst the different groups, and stop Gary from taking over the school for himself. Once we manage to have peace at the school, it doesn't last long before Gary ruins it all over again, and to avoid being expelled, we need to expose Gary for the manipulator he is. We have one final fight on top of the school, end up the victor, and have everything turn out to be just fine. And that's the story of Bully. Bully, despite being a 15-hour-long journey, is pretty simple in terms of the game's main plot after Gary betrays you. Your goal of gaining the trust of the different groups and stopping Gary from taking over the school is the game's goal. And I know some may think I'm oversimplifying the story to set up a negative, but I'm not. There is nothing wrong with a simple main plot, because this goal takes you through a whole range of different missions, meeting the absolutely ridiculous characters in this world, while doing what someone in high school would be doing, by going to classes or exploring the world of Bulworth. And that's Bully's greatest accomplishment. It makes you feel like you've gone back to school. A crazy, insane school, and no school I ever went to, but just that feeling of being younger and back at school. Again, like I mentioned in my intro, Jimmy is a great protagonist to play as because you don't have to take anyone's shit. Bully is full of just the worst humans, and you get to stand up for yourself and knock these dicks down a few pegs, and for me, to this day, it made the story really enjoyable for the most part. Like I said though, everyone in this game is just an absolute garbage human being. From nerd to jock, teachers to students, and everyone in between. They could not be more of an asshole, bar Petey. He's a good dude. Now here's the thing, I think Bully writes these characters really well, and creates a lot of fun moments through the game's dialogue, making for some great characters to watch, because it is funny a lot of the time.
Hey, kid. You got it, right?
No.
Okay, well, then you want to sit on my knee?
You want a kick in the balls?
No, I'm sorry.
I just at some point stopped enjoying the story. I couldn't figure out why this was for a while. I just thought maybe my nostalgia had worn off or something, until I listened to author and former Navy SEAL Jack Carr on the Joe Rogan Experience say this.
Creating James Roos, I want him to be a likable guy. Like I don't want people don't want to spend time with someone they don't like. That's like, why would you do that?
And it all clicked for me. Now, I get that there is a difference between what Jack Carr is trying to create compared to Rockstar Vancouver. Bully is a game centered around a horrible human quality. And because of this, the game has you spending all your time around the worst humans possible. And for me, I can only take so much. I was disinterested in spending so much time with these characters because I genuinely didn't like them, and a lot of them just have no redeeming qualities. I understand the point of the story and the game's subject matter, and having that subject matter be portrayed in an over-the-top comedic way like many other of Rockstar's games. But to have almost no likable characters, not even Jimmy sometimes.
Hey, Darby!
Hey, Johnny.
Hi,
Yo,
Jimmy.
what's up, brother?
Hey, Chad.
So I'm like, yo, it's Jimmy.
You're funny, man.
Yo, man, what's going on?
Jimmy.
Oh, hey, girl, you're looking great.
Ooh.
Great. Thank you for that sugar, darling.
Wow, Jimmy.
All right, boys, that's all I got to say.
Now, I think the concept surrounding this game and the subject matter of bullying and trying to find your place or just be someone who is liked is a really interesting one, and personally, I don't know how you could approach the subject matter any other way than Rockstar Vancouver did here. I just found myself wanting to go back to the gameplay more so than proceed with the story towards the end. Really for me, the characters and environment of Bullworth boiled down to how much negativity can you be around, because I'm sure most people don't have an issue with this. For me though, I just ended up zoning out for cutscenes. I had lost interest in the story towards the end. Also, where is Gary for most of the game? I've heard many call him a great antagonist, but I don't see it. He does a lot of things behind the scenes rather than face to face, and because of this, I actually forgot about him unless he was brought up in conversation. I don't want this to come off like I didn't have any fun with the story, because as I said, most of my experience I was having a blast. But it did hit a wall for me at about the 3rd or 4th chapter where I was like, I just don't care anymore. Which is a shame because the first couple of chapters, I was in it. I was hooked. I couldn't get enough of the awfulness of these people. But that's what ended up happening for me eventually. What did keep me going though towards the end especially was how much fun I was having playing the game. Bully at its core is what many boil the game down to. It's Grand Theft Auto goes to high school. Instead of driving cars or motorbikes, you ride bikes and skateboards. Instead of guns, we have a slingshot, spud cannon, or bottle rockets. And instead of doing anything you please, yeah, you gotta go to class and you have a bedtime. The game has fun with this concept, and it's a blast. You really only have enough time in the day to do 2 or 3 things a day, because going to class takes up a good chunk of your day, which you could always play hooky and skip them, but the game incentivizes these classes and makes them worth going to with rewards and upgrades. And whilst the classes revolve heavily around mini-games, they never become repetitive as long as you are progressing through the chapters at a good pace, because I only did 1 of each class roughly once per chapter. The weakest class is by far music. I mean, even when I'm doing well, it just has no feeling of rhythm to it because it still sounds awful.
This has been great.
But going to gym and playing some dodgeball or fixing bikes, doing some chemistry, it feels worthwhile because I get something for doing these classes that, unlike real school, you actually can use in the game. It feels practical. You know what I mean. Also, Jimmy is always super excited for math.
I hope everyone's ready to learn something. This isn't English class, you know.
When you're not going to classes though, there is a lot of things you could be doing. Going to the carnival, racing go-karts, completing bike races, having a part-time job, collecting the many collectibles for hidden rewards, and obviously completing missions. The missions are jam-packed with variety, even when the task may seemingly be the same as another mission. This is because while some missions can be just go and beat these dudes up, depending on the chapter and how the mission begins can make even similar missions feel unique. The gameplay for these missions can be anywhere though, from stealth to races, pranks to helping a teacher with their drinking problem, or my personal favourite, destroy the Christmas village for creepy Santa, and watch the elves chase after you. A lot of the missions are such a blast to play because of their setup, and the further along you progress in the story, the crazier these missions become, like going to the mental hospital to break out a faction leader, even if this mission did initially glitch on me.
I'm calling the cops.
And when the missions do just evolve into beating up people, as I said, the game does a great job at just making the worst people possible, so it feels good to give them a few smacks. Now, because of the game's, well, high school setting, the combat is done primarily through your bare hands in a good old-fashioned fist fight. Yes, the more you progress, the more gadgets you have at your disposal, but when you're fighting close quarters or get tackled unexpectedly, which happens all the time, your different gadgets like your slingshot, spud cannon, firecrackers, etc. won't be much use to you in these situations. The fist fighting needed to be good, and luckily it is. You begin the game with very little combos and more of a button smasher approach. But throughout the game you'll have a ton of opportunities to upgrade Jimmy, like the hobo at the school teaching you new combos, wrestling class for takedowns, and the preppy's boxing gym for attack damage increases. And with all of these mixed together, it makes for an experience that by the end you almost feel like a god for how quickly you'll deplete your enemy's health. In terms of gameplay, I'm really drawing a blank in terms of aspects I didn't enjoy. I loved being in this world, skating around, doing missions, going on a paper route, going to the carnival, racing, and causing a bit of mischief. The cherry on top of all of this is the game's soundtrack, which as soon as I heard a single note from this soundtrack, I was transported back to 2006. Playing Bully to this day is an all-around great time. Bully was a blast to revisit for the most part. Did I eventually become burnt out with spending time with unlikable people? Yeah. But the story on the whole was still enjoyable. The gameplay though is where I couldn't get enough. I was having so much fun while completing the vast variety of different missions. Going to classes felt like a reward. Doing the many side activities feels worth your time, and for Bullworth being a bit of a nightmare seemingly filled with just the worst people, I enjoyed being in this world and being a bit of a dick myself. And I can say that despite my personal gripes, Bully almost 14 years later definitely holds up today. Bully makes me want to go back and give the early Grand Theft Auto games another try, because right now it looks like Bully took Grand Theft Auto to school. But for now, this has been my retrospective on Bully.